In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, August 11th, here in South Korea. Typhoon Khanun takes its departure from the southern part of the Korean peninsula in the early hours of this Friday, but leaves behind rampant property damage and persistent rainfall. Meanwhile, expectations are mounting about the possibility of a regular summit among leaders of South Korea, Japan and the US ahead of their gathering at Camp David on August 18th. And the 25th World Scout Jamboree is scheduled to come to a grand finale later on this Friday evening with a spectacular K-pop concert featuring big names and their greatest songs. We start in the Greater Seoul area as part of efforts to offset potential rain-related damage. Amid the presence of typhoon, authorities here opened their floodgates to better maintain the water level of the Hangang River starting Thursday evening. For more, I have my colleague Choi Soo-young joining me live with the latest. Soo-young, do fill us in.
Well, Sunny, I'm here at Paldang Dam right now in Hanam, Gyeonggi-do Province, which controls the water levels of the Hangang River. As Typhoon Khanun moved northward, it brought heavy rainfall to the Seoul Metropolitan area, leading to a rise in the water level of the Hangang River. Here at Paldang Dam, last night at 10 p.m. when Khanun was passing through Seoul, the Han River Flood Control Office began releasing over 2,000 tons of water per second, twice the usual amount of discharge. The current water level at the Paldang Dam is around 24 meters below the critical level of 27 meters. As Khanun crosses over to North Korea overnight, there were concerns about the potential for surprise water releases from North Korea's Paldang Dam on the Imjingang River due to the heavy rain. The office here maintained an emergency response system throughout the night in preparation, but as of now, there have been no surprise discharges and the situation remains stable.
Right, I see. Well, that's good to know, Soo-young. Now, the typhoon has left, but I hear sporadic showers remain.
Yes, Sunny, Typhoon Khanun has weakened and moved into North Korea, but in Seoul and here in Hanam, we are still seeing rain. According to the Korean Meteorological Administration, 20 millimeters of rain per hour has been pouring down in some parts of the capital region. Also, Seoul is expected to see 5 to 14 millimeters of rainfall until Saturday, while the northern Gyeonggi-do region is forecast to receive 20 to 60 millimeters of rainfall. The typhoon is expected to be recorded as an unusually long-lasting typhoon. Khanun is the only typhoon that has stayed over South Korea for more than 12 hours, with the exception of Typhoon Solik in 2018. Currently, Typhoon Khanun has weakened near Pyongyang in North Korea, and as of 11 a.m., all typhoon warnings nationwide in South Korea have been lifted, and there are no road closures in downtown Seoul. The KMA said that by Sunday, the entire nation will be moving out of the typhoon's influence and heat is expected to return. That's all I have. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Soo-young, thank you for that report. That was our Choi Soo-young reporting live from the Paldang Dam in Hanam, Gyeonggi-do Province. Now, Typhoon Khanun may have made its exit from South Korea, but it leaves behind a trail of damage and, tragically, one loss of life thus far. For more on this, I have our Kim Jung-shil standing by live on the line. Jung-shil, what is the latest?
Well, Sunny, no additional casualties have been reported by the government as of 11 a.m. this morning. But as you said, a 67-year-old man was killed after being swept away by torrents in Daegu, and another man in an electric wheelchair went missing after falling into a small stream also in Daegu. A police investigation is underway as both accidents are classified as safety accidents instead of typhoon-related.
Right, I see. And our prayers, of course, to the families. Meanwhile, Jung-shil, I hear property and infrastructure damage have been rampant. Do tell us more.
Yes, that's right, Sunny. The government says there are more than 360 cases of damage across the nation. Much of the damage to roads and public facilities was in South Korea's southern city of Busan, and flooding damage to houses were reported in Gangwon-do Province and Daegu that saw heavy rain yesterday. And here is some of the pictures that can give you an idea of just how powerful the typhoon was in Geoje City in the south. Bricks fell down from an apartment building on Thursday morning, damaging multiple cars underneath, and thankfully no one was hurt. And also there have been multiple reports of trees falling on the side of the roads, blocking traffic. You can see that the roots of the trees are completely out of the ground. And speaking of trees, I want to mention a South Korean natural monument that was damaged due to the typhoon. Parts of a multi-stem pine tree in Gumi City was damaged due to the typhoon yesterday morning. The tree is thought to be around 400 years of age and is considered to be one of the oldest multi-stem pine trees here in Korea.
Right, Changshil, a very unfortunate event, if I may say so myself, of course. How is the government maintaining its disaster management then?
Well, President Yoon Suk-yeol this morning ordered efforts to help the recovery for people who were affected by the powerful typhoon. Nearly 16,000 people had to evacuate from their homes yesterday, but 70% of them are now back in their home as of 11 a.m. The president reaffirmed that taking preemptive measures to control roads and evacuation is the principle of disaster control.
Right, and before you leave us, Changshil, what is the latest with regard to travel on rail, in air and at sea as of this Friday?
Well, Sunny, I can tell you that KTX and all other trains are operating on a normal schedule from this morning. Airplanes have also resumed flights across the nation since yesterday afternoon, and most ferries are also back running with few exceptions on the East Coast and Incheon area as the region is feeling the final effects of the typhoon. That's all I have for now. Now back to you, Sunny.
All right then, Changshil, thank you for that coverage. That was our Kim Jung-shil reporting live from the news center. In other news, Seoul, Tokyo and Washington are reportedly looking to launch a regular trilateral summit that meets at least once a year, and an announcement to this end will be shared during next week's talks at Camp David. Our senior presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
The leaders of South Korea, the United States and Japan are planning to meet at least once a year for trilateral talks and hold joint military exercises to deter North Korea's nuclear threat. That's according to a US diplomat Thursday, who said the three countries are close to finalizing a joint statement to be issued at Camp David after Presidents Yoon Suk-yeol and Joe Biden and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida hold talks next Friday. US Ambassador to Japan Rahm Emanuel told Japanese media that the joint document is being finalized and will include holding a yearly trilateral leaders meeting separate from international conferences. He said the leaders are also looking to conduct annual trilateral joint training between their militaries as North Korea continues to develop nuclear weapons and missiles and China strengthens its maritime advances. The three leaders will also strengthen intel sharing and cyber cooperation, as well as touch upon economic security. With such agreements expected to, quote, change the strategic landscape of the Indo-Pacific region, Emanuel added that a separate vision statement will be released, taking trilateral collaboration into a new phase. This comes amid speculation that the three countries are working to build a mechanism for three-way cooperation, although it is unclear whether the joint statement would mention China or to what extent it would be alluded to, given the geopolitical sensitivities in the region. According to US Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security, Ellie Ratner, the Camp David meeting isn't just about getting together and having dialogue and sharing views, but would also seek innovative ways to regularize trilateral cooperation. On that note, Seoul's National Security Advisor Cho Tae-yong told reporters last Friday that a consensus is being formed on holding the yearly trilateral gatherings, and that the outcome will likely materialize after the leaders' discussions. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also, Seoul, Tokyo and Washington have called for a UN Security Council meeting for August 17th to address Pyongyang's human rights atrocities. Now, should such a gathering take place, it will mark the first time a North Korean human rights meeting is held at the UN Security Council since the year 2017. According to U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, on Thursday, North Korea's rampant abuse of human rights is closely linked to broader regional peace and stability. Now, North Korea has repeatedly rejected allegations of atrocities, asserting instead that sanctions are to blame for its dire humanitarian situation. The head of the organization overseeing a universal ban on nuclear tests has voiced hopes for North Korea to refrain from conducting a seventh nuclear weapons test. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyeon-jae covers his remarks.
North Korea's commitment to a moratorium on nuclear testing or signing the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty could be the first step to building the trust needed to lead to peace and security on the Korean peninsula. That's according to the head of the CTBTO, a global body that promotes the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. While noting that the nuclear test site in North Korea appears to be ready for use, he said the decision of whether or not to carry out another test lies with the North Korean leadership, and that the pathway to the future has got to be through dialogue.
I would call upon North Korea to do the responsible thing and commit with the rest of the nations of the world to a moratorium on nuclear testing.
North Korea conducted its sixth and last nuclear test in 2017. It declared a halt to all nuclear and ICBM tests in April 2018, but broke its self-imposed moratorium last year by resuming long-range missile tests. Based in Vienna, Austria, the CTBTO is responsible for seeking to establish a ban on nuclear testing and has more than 300 monitoring stations around the world to detect signs of a nuclear explosion.
So to the people of the Republic of Korea, we can say to you is that an explosion, a nuclear explosion in North Korea will be detected no matter where it is or when it takes place.
He also stressed that South Korea has been a strong supporter of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty from day one, and that the partnership is getting stronger. South Korea signed the treaty on September 24, 1996, and ratified it on the same day. Adopted by the United Nations in 1996, the treaty has near universal support, but has not been put into force, as it still needs ratification from 8 specific countries. The US, China, Egypt, Iran, and Israel have signed the treaty but not ratified it, and North Korea, India, and Pakistan have not even signed it. Meanwhile, on the public debate over whether South Korea should acquire its own nuclear weapons to deter threats from North Korea, he said the country has been taking a bold and responsible position to continue to call on the world without nuclear weapons. He added this has been a consistent position of the Korean government that is very much appreciated. 배은지, Arirang News.
A rare deal between Washington and Tehran is seeing a prisoner exchange and access to billions of blocked funds for Iran. Our Choi Min-jung has details.
The United States and Iran have reached a deal to swap prisoners, marking an encouraging development in their rocky relationship. Sources familiar with the matter said the two countries have reached an agreement to free Americans in exchange for several jailed Iranians in the U.S., as well as access to billions of U.S. dollars in Iranian funds frozen in South Korea. The U.S. State Department on Thursday confirmed that its citizens were released from prison and are currently under house arrest in Iran.
First, it's a positive step that they were released from prison and sent to home detention. But this is just the beginning of a process that I hope and expect will lead to their return home to the United States.
It's reportedly known that the 5 Americans will be allowed to leave Iran once Tehran secures the $6 billion worth of oil payments frozen in South Korea due to U.S. sanctions. According to the Iranian Foreign Ministry, the process of releasing the funds is underway. However, the U.S. clarified that the funds could only be used for humanitarian purposes, like buying food or medicine.
Iran's own funds would be used and transferred to restricted accounts such that the monies can only be used for humanitarian purposes, which, as you know, is permitted under our sanctions.
The rare deal between Washington and Tehran reportedly comes after at least 2 years of negotiations. Though it is viewed as a positive step to their relations, there is also criticism that the funds allocated for humanitarian goods could be used for Iran's nuclear program. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The 25th World Scout Jamboree is coming to a close later on this Friday with a much-anticipated K-pop concert at the Seoul World Cup Stadium after an eventful fortnight here in Korea. Our An Sung-jin has details.
The 25th World Scout Jamboree will come to a close on Friday with a K-pop Super Live concert and a closing ceremony at the Seoul World Cup Stadium. The closing ceremony is set to begin at 5:30 p.m. and will be followed by a K-pop concert from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. 19 acts are set to perform, including NCT Dream, Mamamoo, New Jeans, Monsta X's Shunwoo and Hyungwon, The Boys, ITZY, and other K-pop groups. Actor Kong Myung, ITZY Yuna, and Hain from New Jeans will host the show. The concert was initially set to take place last Sunday at the World Scout Jamboree's campsite at Saemangum, but it was rescheduled for Friday at the Jeonju World Cup Stadium, an hour's drive from the campsite, because of heatwave and weather concerns. However, with fears over Typhoon Khanun, the venue was changed again, this time to the Seoul World Cup Stadium. About 1,000 buses carrying the Jamboree participants will arrive at the stadium between 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., spaced out to avoid congestion. Police will be on duty to further manage traffic in the area.
First and foremost, safety is the most important thing. Today, we have to transport a large number of Jamboree attendees. Please pay special attention to the security of the crew and the participating artists, as well as the food and maintenance at the venue. Double-check stage equipment and facilities.
The Ministry of Health and Welfare, as well as the Seoul Metropolitan Government and the Fire Department, prepared 4 on-site emergency medical centers and 10 ambulances in case of emergency. About 40 medical personnel will also be on site. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
On the economic front, Korea is reportedly noting some ease and slowdown amid recovery in exports, especially those of chips. Now, this is according to Seoul's finance ministry on this Friday in its latest Green Book, which made note of Korea's trade surplus for the second month in a row in June as imports dropped deeper than exports. The ministry expects a third month of surplus when figures for chip exports of July are tallied. Separately, the country's consumer sentiment index also rose 2 percentage points in July on month. Meanwhile, U.S. inflation accelerated 3.2% in July on year, and while it has ticked higher for the first time in 13 months, pundits point out details within the latest data show continued consumer price moderation. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
According to data released Thursday by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, U.S. consumer prices rose 3.2% on year in July, up from June's 3% increase. Despite the acceleration, the figure still fell below economists' expectations of 3.3%. While the pace of consumer price increases accelerated on an on-year basis for the first time in over a year, it was largely due to year-over-year comparisons to July 2022, when monthly inflation turned negative. On month, prices rose 0.2% due to rising shelter costs, which accounted for 90% of the total increase. Core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, also increased by 0.2% on month and 4.7% on year, the lowest since October 2021. This was below the Dow Jones's estimate of 4.8%, all of which still signals that inflation is on a downward trend despite the slight acceleration. Food prices rose 0.3% month on month, while energy prices saw a rise of only 0.1%. The latest data shows that while inflation has significantly dropped since the 40-year highs since last year, it's still above the U.S. Fed's target of 2%. While the figures might not be enough to lead the U.S. Central Bank toward cutting rates just yet, it may signal a rate freeze in the FOMC meeting slated for September. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Samsung today is releasing its latest premium smartphones, the Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Fold 5. They will be available in 50 nations by the end of September. Samsung's new devices have been breaking records for pre-orders, outselling previous models not only here at home but worldwide. Over 1 million units have been sold here in Korea between August 1st and the 7th, which marks a fresh pre-sale record for foldables. Interest in insuring people as well as their property from extreme heat-related repercussions has been growing in recent days amid sizzling temperatures. Our Moon Hae-ryun has this report.
When you think of extreme weather conditions, what image comes to mind? With the heat wave that's been gripping the country for the past 2 weeks, insurance companies and the government are working to provide financial support and compensation for damage that's been wrought by the weather, not just limited to flooding. This insurance company has recently released a new insurance package that's been garnering attention amid the increasing number of heat-related illnesses like heat stroke, as it covers health problems specific to different seasons.
You can receive 300,000 Korean won, or roughly $228 with this insurance plan if you're diagnosed with a heat-related illness such as heat stroke or heat exhaustion at a hospital or general medical practice.
But it's not just people that are suffering in this weather. Livestock such as the goats here have also been affected. Extreme heat causes them to become more aggressive and prone to fights among themselves due to stress. Combined with the physical effects of heat such as loss of appetite, the heat wave has resulted in losses that farmers with smaller farms have been unable to be compensated for.
Many goat farms in South Korea are run on a small scale, so we can't join the Disaster Livestock Insurance Plan.
The current disaster livestock insurance plan in South Korea is run and regulated by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And bee farmers too have found issues with it during their battle with the heat, as bees die from being unable to regulate temperatures inside melting hives.
Although bees are on the list of livestock that can be covered by the livestock insurance plan, it's impossible for us to claim compensation because, unlike cattle, we can't count the number of bees that have died. It's also not like all the bees die here. Some will die away from the hive.
The heat wave follows weeks of heavy downpours which cause damage to farmland and farm buildings, such as at this chicken farm. It's also far more humid this summer as a result of the rain, which means that diseases are being passed around more easily, as well as rendering water cooling systems like this useless.
Diseases like avian influenza are covered by the government insurance, but there are a lot of infectious diseases like the IBD that chickens are prone to that aren't.
So I visited the Agricultural Ministry to find out more about the current insurance plans available to these farmers. This plan was first made available in 1997 and has since come to include 16 different categories of livestock, including cattle, pigs, chickens and sheep. The number of farms that have applied for this insurance has grown steadily over the years but grew exponentially in 2022, with the number of farms signed up to this insurance jumping by nearly 50%. The government is well aware of the problems raised by farmers and plans to implement necessary changes.
We currently cover the primary effects of natural disasters like heavy rain or heat waves, but we're also running a trial with insurance policies to cover infectious diseases among livestock by starting with cattle from 2021 until next year.
With climate change having a global impact, the ministry is benchmarking insurance policies abroad.
Disaster insurance is becoming important as a result of more frequent adverse weather conditions. That's why we're monitoring insurance plans in countries where this is already well developed, like the United States, to help improve our own.
As countries continue to grapple with the intensifying effects of global warming, collaboration across borders to provide financial protection for people and livestock affected will become increasingly crucial. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The tropical storm became a tropical depression this morning in North Korean Khanun, that is, but it dropped torrential showers and violent winds to east coast regions. East of Gangwon-do province and southeast coast, they were received nearly 400 millimeters of downpours since Wednesday. And those near the water still need to stay on a high alert. A high seas watch remains in place in the East Sea and West Sea, while a strong wind advisory remains in place for west coast regions. And there will be lingering showers into early Saturday in the upper parts of the country. 5 to 60 millimeters of rain showers are in the forecast. Southern regions, meanwhile, will see passing showers during the day today. Now, we can say those in the south are free from the typhoon's impact today. Summer weather has returned under sunny skies, with highs rising into the 30s again this afternoon. Calm and mostly sunny weather return this weekend, and there will not be any major heat wave from now. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour. But do stay with us for our panel session on the planned trilateral summit among South Korea, the US and Japan over at Camp David next week. Thank you for now.